Beyond Resilience is a series of curated conversations created by Firelight.
Beyond Resilience does a lot to keep people connected and keep people talking about films or talking about issues, connecting our filmmakers and other filmmakers together.
We wanted to create a space where our community, that is BIPOC documentary filmmakers, could lead a conversation.
We have to do a better job of knowing that films aren't just what we can physically see on the screen. It's about the people that put in the blood, sweat, and tears behind the scenes.
Knowing that what you're so passionate about, someone looks at as unmarketable or niche. Who's the audience for this? Who's going to care about this, right? And those simple things that people say are like daggers to you.
I think that is the part of the violence of the model minority shit, you know, that it like shaves away our history of resistance, of rebellion, of ferocity.
We have always resisted. We have always fought back in many different forms.
It's an evolving form. You have to evolve or not you will stagnate.
You have to have intention to change, and you have to understand that you're not changing to try to give anybody a gift, but you're changing so that you can do your job better.
What we're asking for is just proportional access, proportional resources, proportional marketing money, so that it does actually meet its mission, so that it does actually lean into the diversity of perspectives.
I hope that Beyond Resilience will keep its edge, will keep pushing the boundaries of the conversations that we need to have, and will keep growing its audiences, pulling in new people from the industry, outside the industry. It continues to be a space where people can have a BIPOC creator-led conversation. That is what it's about.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, IDA and Abby. Thank you, Laura, for interpreting. Thank you, Goshanda and Mary for doing CART, and Kenton. This is a phenomenal gathering. Before we introduce our wonderful panelists, I'm wondering if anyone in the audience has any access needs we can address. If you want to drop those in the chat. If you can't hear us, if there's something that's not working for you, we want to make sure we can bring in all the communities that have joined us today. So maybe even you're okay, you can hear us would be good too. So if anyone's out there in the chat land, are you with us? Thank you, Kat. I'm so glad you can hear us. Thank you, Linda. Hooray, perfect. Thank you. Wonderful. Juliana, Graciela, and Maria, I can introduce us, but also want to make sure that your access needs are met before we jump into things.
Muchas gracias, Ida, Abby, Laura, Shanda, Kenten, Mari, que nos está ayudando con los subtítulos CART. Qué bonito este grupo, esta reunión de personas. Primero quiero ver si todas las necesidades de acceso están resueltas. Entonces, si el público, si tiene alguna necesidad, sí nos puede hacer saber por medio del chat. Y antes de comenzar, quería asegurarme o comprobar con usted, María, Graciela, si hay algo más que necesitan antes de comenzar.
Oh, good.
Bien,
No,
yo bien.
Ok, también, todo bien.
Oh, good.
Wonderful, then we will get started. So thank you everyone for coming today. It is exciting to join virtually and maybe in physical space. I am Michelle Hurtubise. I go by she, her pronouns. I have long dark hair with side swoopy bangs. Those were a new Zoom edition with a blue background behind me with Kin Theory, an initiative I'm working on with Mia Taro. Kin Theory is an Indigenous media makers database, and as a Cantonese, French, and Irish scholar, activist, and bridge builder, I'm really excited to be moderating this conversation today.
Muchas gracias a todos por venir. Mi nombre es Michelle Hurtubise. Soy una mujer con fondo azul atrás, con cabello más oscuro y una franja que es una edición nueva. Me complace mucho formar parte de este panel. Estudio la teoría la teoría Ken, y trabajo en el proyecto Niatero. Soy estudiante de cantonesa de francés, de irlandés, y por eso me complace mucho formar parte de este panel.
Thank you, Laura. I've started to drop links in the chat. I hope that our panelists can also share their wonderful works, because there's so much work that they're working on, as well as questions in the Q&A function, so that we make sure to see them and that you can vote them up or drop them wherever is accessible for you. So this panel is really exciting to me today because it's Beyond Resilience. Huge fan of Firelight, so grateful for the series and accessibilities events that they have made available for all of us. And this Beyond Resilience panel is about Indigenous forms. And so while these phenomenal Indigenous women have decades and decades of work about resilience in community with a variety of crucially important topics, we're also going to talk about the form of filmmaking and why it is important for Indigenous made media to have a space in all of these arenas that are out there, but also how when we work individually with people, there's also maybe some shared learnings and solidarity that can uplift all the work we're doing. So we're here to talk about each other and our work, but also the form itself and the structures that support us.
Muy bien. Gracias a las panelistas. Espero ya he puesto unos enlaces en el chat y espero que las panelistas también puedan compartir unos enlaces a sus obras, a sus trabajos también en el chat, porque son increíbles. También tenemos la función de preguntas y respuestas, y el público puede dejarnos sus preguntas ahí y votar por las mejores. Hoy estamos participando en un panel, se llama Más allá de la resiliencia, y estamos aquí para hablar específicamente de formas indígenas, y esto es un panel apoyado por Firelight Media. Soy muy fan de Firelight Media, me encanta su trabajo. Y entonces estamos aquí con estas dos panelistas que cuentan, o tres panelistas, perdón, que cuentan con años de trabajo, de trayectoria, y estamos aquí para hablar, sí, de esos trabajos y de conversar una con la otra, pero también de hablar de la forma en que hacemos nuestro cine.
So I'll let each of our wonderful panelists introduce themselves. I'll give a little teaser, but maybe we'll start with, after I give a teaser, we'll go Graciela, Juliana, and then Maria. And if you would like to introduce yourself in any Indigenous languages, because of the multiple interpretations, maybe you can just let us know you're doing that. And then in whatever language you would also like to do, or however you want to start things off in a good way.
Quiero que se presenten ustedes mismas. Voy a decir unas palabras antes de comenzar con las presentaciones, pero la orden sería Graciela, Juliana y después tal vez María. Siéntanse libres de presentarse en sus idiomas indígenas. Tal vez nos puede avisar de lo que piensan hacer al respecto, pero pueden presentarse en sus idiomas y quizás si quiere después en español. Así será.
Great. So I'm really been moved. We had just a quick conversation, and I wish we could have picnics and hikes to talk about all the work you're doing. But I was really compelled, Graciela, with how you were saying that we need media as a tool to fight and resist with, and what guardians of important knowledge and wisdom we offer, embracing the pluralities of who we are and the transformative potential of our work together in community. Juliana, I've been really amazed with the trajectory of your career and how you're rewriting history with a goal to break down stereotypes, including Afro-Indigenous identities and the pluralities and diversities and intersections that also come with that, and uplifting while breaking through harmful stereotypes to tell stories through an Indigenous lens. And Maria, you so wonderfully involve yourself in the work. And I appreciated how you said you grabbed a camera because you needed it to fight and resist and call out injustices, while also uplifting Indigenous women and your community and your family in community-based film projects, trainings that you're also doing, and how we can see the world through Indigenous eyes, through languages, and the camera can form a bridge of understanding to connect us. So that's my teaser. I'll let Laura interpret, and then Graciela, welcome.
Me siento muy conmovida por poder participar en este panel y conocer más sobre ustedes. De hecho, me gustaría hacer un picnic o hacer un trekking con ustedes para conocerlas mejor y más sobre sus obras. Pero, en fin, quería comenzar con Graciela. Graciela, me conmovió lo que dijo sobre la necesidad de utilizar la cámara como una herramienta de resistencia y la importancia de nuestro papel y que desempeñamos como guardianas de ese conocimiento, de esa sabiduría y el potencial de transformación que tenemos para cambiar nuestras comunidades. Y luego Juliana me impresiona mucho su trayectoria y la meta que tiene de derrumbar los estereotipados y la forma en que trabaja en la intersección de identidades, tanto indígenas como afrodescendientes, y la forma en que está comprometida con contar la historia por medio de una lente indígena. Y finalmente María que dijo que agarró la cámara para luchar contra las injusticias. Y me emociona mucho también el trabajo que está haciendo para, a la vez de luchar contra esas injusticias, de enaltecer, de levantar a las mujeres, y el empeño que has puesto con los proyectos comunitarios, y cómo está utilizando la cámara para ayudarnos a entender su perspectiva, a ver el mundo como de otra perspectiva y utilizar la cámara como un puente.
Graciela, would you like to introduce yourself to us and highlight anything that's important to you?
Graciela, ¿le gustaría presentarse y subrayar cualquier cosa que le parezca importante?
Baesha pa terawea, baesha pa gente cuera, cuera, xerera cuña poturoru, xerera ha jaguapirupe. Bueno, yo hablé un poquito aquí de mi lengua materna. Soy indígena Guarani Kaiowá y Aché de Brasil. Y hablé un poquito, cumplimenté a ustedes que están aquí. Hablé también mi nombre en mi lengua, que es Cuñapotururu, que significa mujer flor contenta. Y bueno, primeramente agradecer, ¿no? Por estar acá con ustedes. Creo que para mí es un desafío muy grande porque yo no hablo inglés. Hablo un poquito de español por cuenta de mi pueblo, que es de frontera. Entonces hablo mi lengua en portugués y español. É uma mistura muito grande. Então, primeiramente, colocar esse desafio, porque como nós estamos neste papel também, né, de trabalhar com a imagem, com a figura, é muito importante, né, nós também apoderarmos de outras estruturas de linguagem também. Algún día yo voy a hablar inglés, pero no ahora. Bueno, hablar un poquito de mi trabajo, como ya habló Michelle, es para mí hoy una cuestión política, porque de sobrevivencia, no solamente de lucha, claro que, por supuesto que es, pero para mí una cuestión de existencia no sentido de también normalizar nuestros cambios culturales, porque nosotros estamos en todos los lugares, no solo en el territorio indígena, pero en todas as estancias hoy, principalmente en todas las formas de trabajar con imagen, que no digo solamente con el cine, pero existe otras formas de trabajar en las artes. Hoy en mi país hay un gran número de indígenas hermanos que trabajan con arte contemporánea, con la música. Entonces, la necesidad de nosotros ponernos atrás de las cámaras, no solamente al frente, es una cuestión hoy de existencia política, porque no es solamente hablarmos de nuestros pueblos, de un lugar que normalmente nos colocan como una cuestión etnográfica o antropológica, pero nosotros tenemos que estar actuando en ese sentido como un todo, porque la sociedad hoy es influenciada por la imagen. La imagen tiene un poder muy grande de poder, de influencia y de comunicación. Entonces, cuando nosotros estamos atrás de las cámaras, en la frente de las cámaras, tenemos la posibilidad de nos mostrar. Y es muy importante esa cuestión porque también nos muestran cómo no somos pueblos del pasado, no somos contemporáneos, no somos diversos, no tenemos un rostro, no tenemos un cabello que es indígena, nos tenemos una diversidad muy grande de riqueza cultural también. Entonces, hoy para mí, el cine es mucho hablar de una existencia política y también de salvaguardar las memorias ancestrales. Entonces, más que una cuestión de nos colocar en seguimientos, por ejemplo, el cine indígena, el cine de mujeres, no. Nosotros hacemos el cine, no tiene una descripción, porque siempre nos colocan en un lugar que normalmente es apartado de otros lenguajes, de otros modos de pensar en la imagen del cine. No, nos sabemos hacer mucho bien, tenemos una pluralidad cultural de creación, de pensamiento, né, de utilizar a imagem em uma riqueza muito grande. Então, em todos os lugares, não só em Brasil, mas creio que em todos os lugares, a indústria cinematográfica só tem a ganhar com as produções indígenas. Não solamente a questão de falar de um segmento sobre-representado, não é este lugar. É um lugar também de poder, um lugar de riqueza, um lugar de direitos de poder também está nestes lugares, de nos mirarmos, porque por muito tempo nós outros nos mirávamos em essas teles, por exemplo, el cine, en televisión. Nosotros, yo particularmente, empecé en ese camino del cine por una falta de referencia de mi rostro, de mi pueblo. No tenía hoy, con mucha lucha, nos tenemos algunas referencias hoy en el país, en Brasil, pero son muy pocos, muy poquitos, porque é um lugar também muito competitivo. E nosso cine é uma questão de hablar e de hacer um pouco diferente. Para mim, por exemplo, é um pouco diferente porque, para mim, o tempo de produção, de pensar uma narrativa, tiene a ver mucho con el tiempo.
Graciela, voy a pedir que solo que tome una pausa para interpretar.
Sí.
Perdón. So I just
Sí.
asked for a quick pause to be able to interpret. My name is Graciela Guarani. I opened with a greeting that was in my language, right? And I basically greeted you and said hello and said my name. Punyapa Tururu is my name in my language, which means happy flower, woman who is a happy flower. So the first thing that I need to do is thank you all. Thank you. It's a big challenge for me to be here today because I don't speak English. I do speak some Spanish because of the community that I come from. It's a border community. I also speak my own language and I speak Portuguese, so it's all a bit of a mix. It's also a challenge beyond the language to work in the field that we work in, to work with images, to work with visuals. We really need to empower ourselves the most that we can, and empowering ourselves with language would be one of those ways. So one day, not today, but one day I will learn to speak English. As far as my work goes, it is, as Michelle pointed out, largely political. But beyond that, it's about survival. It's not just about the fight. It's not just about, it is about that, but not just about film as a way to fight. It is about our mere existence. It's a way to normalize as well our cultural changes. We live in so many places, not just in our territory. There are so many different ways in which we do our work, in which we work with images, and not just film. There's a lot of other artistic mediums out there that are being practiced today in our country. We have many brothers and sisters doing contemporary art and working with music. So it's really not just about putting us in front of the cameras. It can't just be just ethnographies that we form part of an anthropological piece. We must act in all of the facets that compose film, and be careful when we do this, because society is highly influenced by images. Imagery is powerful. It's very influential. And so it's really only when we are both in front and behind the camera that we're empowered to really show ourselves the way that we want to be shown, which is, we're not a community of the past. We're not a community relegated to antiquity. There's not one indigenous face. There's not a type of hair that is indigenous hair. It's beyond that. It's a huge amount of richness. Film, yes, is political, but I also use it to safeguard our ancestral memories. Beyond that, there are women who are working in indigenous film, and we know how to make film. We are very good at making film, and the way that we do it is very pluralistic. The way that we think, the way we create is full of pluralities. And so there's a richness that is imbued in the work that we do with images. And so the film industry as a whole will only win by having more of this. The truth is that we don't see ourselves reflected very often in TV or in film. And so I began in film because I wasn't seeing any examples of people in the industry who come from my community or who look like I look. And so today we have fought. And now today we have a few examples. They are very few, but we do have a few examples. And that's why our work is very rich. We'll pause there.
Thank you, Graciela. Did you have any other closing thoughts before we move on to Juliana? There's so much to talk about. There is a wealth of pluralities that I hope we can continue to bring together.
Muchas gracias, Graciela. Quería cerrar con algo antes de pasar a María, creo. Hay mucho por hablar de las pluralidades y sí, mucho para hablar. ¿Algo más?
No. So, vamos adelante.
No, just that for now. We can move forward.
Thank you. This is just the beginning, and I invite people in the chat to use their preferred language, especially to speak to our various panelists. We'll do our best. And Juliana, welcome.
La intérprete se equivocó. Ahora va a ser Juliana y el público puede escribir en el chat en el idioma en el mejor idioma, en el idioma que corresponde. Y ahora vamos a pasar la palabra a Juliana.
Maruaweka, Onahaka Nasuka, Nanani ya sa Juliana Nasenamana. That is Comanche, my language. Hello, tell me everything. How are you doing? I'm a citizen of the Comanche Nation, and I'm zooming in here from my homelands here in Oklahoma, Indian Territory. So I'm really happy to be here with you all, and thank you so much for having me.
Ese fue un saludo de mi idioma Comanche. Soy ciudadana del pueblo Comanche y me estoy sintonizando desde la zona en que vivo, que es Oklahoma, territorio indígena. Muchas gracias por invitarme a formar parte de este panel.
Thank you. Before we move to Maria, Juliana, do you want to add any more about this incredible work you've done moving through history and into the future? Something that maybe you'd like the audience to know that's critically important to your work, a through line, perhaps, a taste?
Antes de pasar la palabra a María, Juliana, no sé si nos gustaría contarnos un poco más sobre su obra increíble que busca en la historia, busca ese hilo conductor para traer la historia hacia el futuro, esas obras increíbles que está trabajando ahora para que el público conozca un poco más.
Sure. I started making films about, I guess, over 20 years ago it's been, gosh. Yeah, over 20 years ago. And I think going into it, at the time, there was nothing representing Native people in the documentary form. It was always a repetitive story of, the repetitive stories of the atrocities that we faced here in North America. And while those were all important to make aware as part of our history, I also found that we're missing positive, inspiring stories of resilience, and especially around women, centered around women. When many of our communities are matriarchal societies, and so it's odd that women are left out of the history books, and thereafter, they're left out of film and media. And so I really kind of wanted to bring attention to women, Native women especially, and also just to really kind of break those stereotypes, as you said before, Michelle. We always were represented as very pitiful, and the reality is that we were not. And I think when you give people those same stereotypes over and over, people tend to forget that they're actually people, and they see them as historical relics of the past. And so I think this invisibility is obviously very problematic. So it was really important to me. And as I kind of progressed in my career, I think, this idea of decolonizing filmmaking was fascinating. And I try to look at all of my approaches in film with an eye towards the process, changing that process and how we're used to thinking and behaving in certain ways in the filmmaking process, and how do we change that? Because now is such obviously a really exciting time for change for filmmakers of color. So yeah, it's a constant process, and I'm happy to be a part of it. So.
Sí, me encantaría. De hecho, comencé en esta industria hace 20 años. Y en ese momento tampoco veía representaciones de mí, de mi pueblo, de los pueblos indígenas. Solo vi las mismas, todas las historias repetidas de las atrocidades que fueron cometidas en Norteamérica. Y sí, es bien importante que la gente las conozca, que haya más concientización. Sin embargo, sentía que lo que faltaba, eran historias que inspirasen, y sobre todo historias sobre, por y sobre mujeres, porque las mujeres carecemos en la industria cinematográfica y también en la historia misma. Entonces mi idea fue más bien poner un foco en las mujeres indígenas y poder derrubar ese estereotipado que existe. No sé, nos representan como personas medio patéticas, débiles, y no somos, y eso nos invisibiliza, y ese es un problema. Ese es un problema que quería arreglar. También a lo largo de mi carrera fui desarrollándome más y me interesé en la idea de la descolonización de la forma en que hacemos el cine. Entonces siempre trato de estar pendiente, consciente de ese norte, de ese concepto en mi proceso. Y es un buen momento, es un momento emocionante para los y las cineastas de color BIPOC.
Thanks, Juliana. This is great. So much to dive into. Maria, would you like to share with us? I love that we're talking about Indigenous women, and I thought maybe we saw a sneak of your family too. Everyone's welcome to join in.
Juliana, muchas gracias. Me encanta que estamos hablando de las mujeres indígenas que participan en el cine. Entonces, con eso me gustaría pasarle la palabra a María.
Kolabal, Michelle Kolabalik, Ansetik, Nichimah Konton, Li Comonchis Ilar, Nichimah Hoga Bontonik Tacotolik. Es un saludo en mi idioma, Tzotzil, Batzikop, de acá del territorio ancestral Tzotzil, en el sur de México. Soy María, pertenezco al linaje Sojo de este territorio y me siento muy conmovida. Mi corazón, el saludo que les decía era pues que mi corazón está floreciendo por compartir este espacio y que también deseo que sus corazones florezcan desde donde nos están viendo, escuchando, desde los distintos territorios, pero que siempre estamos unidas, unidos, unides en una energía ancestral. Y me siento muy identificada con lo que comentaba Graciela, con lo que recientemente comentó Juliana, y creo que son esas energías ancestrales, espirituales, las que nos traen en este espacio y en este momento para poder como encontrarnos reencontrarnos, corazonarnos. Y coincido mucho con todo y con todo lo que comentaban las compañeras. A mí me tocó también ese proceso de no sentirme representada en esos medios audiovisuales, en la industria cinematográfica, y al contrario, sentir que habían estereotipos que no nos hacían sentir bien, que no nos hacían sentir cómodas, cómodos, que queríamos negar eso que se representaba de nosotras, de nosotros, porque no se hablaba de toda esa sabiduría ancestral de la que habla Graciela, ¿no? O de otro tipo de representaciones. Había y hay todavía estas miradas colonizadoras. Entonces, cuando creo que coincidimos en que tomamos la cámara por esta necesidad de una autorrepresentación digna, y desde esa posición empezar a contar esas historias que no se cuentan. Igual que Juliana también en estos procesos creativos de hacer una película, pues también lo pienso como se piensa aquí en Tzotzil, desde la mente, el corazón, cómo integrar en ese lenguaje cinematográfico cierta mirada, cierta estética, cierto ritmo de cómo contar historias, cómo se cuentan las historias desde nuestros propios idiomas, cómo pensar las películas desde nuestro propio pensamiento originario, indígena, tzotzil, guaraní, o como le queramos llamar, ¿no? Entonces yo creo que ese es el proceso en el que siento que estoy y estamos tres compañeros en un proceso de reflexión sobre cómo queremos autorrepresentarnos, y en esa autorrepresentación estamos también representando a nuestras comunidades, como sí somos individuos, individuas, pero colectivos, ¿no? Y bueno, yo creo que por ahora está ahí.
I'm honored to be here. I just introduced myself in my language, Tzotzil, which is a community. The territory is in the very south of Mexico. My name is Maria, and the lineage that I come from is called Soho. I'm honored to be here, and in the greeting that I gave, what I basically said that as I am here with you, my heart is blooming, my heart is flowering, and I hope that yours is doing the same wherever you may be. And we're all united by this great ancestral energy. And that's what brings us here today. That's what keeps us here today in conversation. I really identify with much of what Juliana and Graciela have said. We are here today under that umbrella of the great ancestral energy to be able to see each other more clearly, and to, I feel, allow more of a literal interpretation to wed our hearts together, to become heartened to one another. I also did not feel represented in film. It was actually the opposite, that I saw that there were a lot of stereotypes that were being portrayed, and because of these stereotypes, they really took away our ability to feel well, to feel comfortable. And so many of the other parts of our stories were suppressed. For example, that centuries old wisdom that Graciela mentioned, and other representations, it seemed like the way that we were represented was limited to this colonialist gaze that was and that is. And so I think all of us, all three of us, we seem to be united in the fact that we picked up the camera for that reason, because we were bent on providing a dignified representation of ourselves and to tell the stories that were not being told. And here, the challenge is how do I tell a story? The way that we are in the world as Tzotzils, there's a certain mindset, and our heart is brought to it as well. And so the challenge is, how do we convey that Tzotzil mind and that Tzotzil heart in our filmmaking? There's a certain perspective or gaze or aesthetics or even pacing that is specific to who we are, and how do we translate that into the work that we are making? How do we tell stories with our own language, with our own ways of thinking, with our own outlooks on the world, whether that be Tzotzil or Guarani or whatever indigenous community we may come from? So, and we're here today to reflect on that and to talk about how we can best represent ourselves. And as we do that, we are also at the same time representing our communities. And so I think I'll pause there.
Thank you. So beautiful from all of you. Juliana, Graciela, Maria, do you have a question for each other before I dive into another one?
Muchas gracias, muy bonito. ¿Alguna de ustedes tiene una pregunta para otra panelista antes de pasar a la primera pregunta?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Adelante.
Well, I am moved by not only what is being said, but also the representation in this room. I can only see what's on the screen in front of me, but they're beautiful people of color with a variety of languages and Indigenous women. So you're not only doing it on screen with bodies of work that I hope everyone goes and watches on screens, but also physically by being in community and standing up today. So thank you for the time that you're sharing with us today. Along those lines, I thought we might dive into why it's awesome, why it's wonderful to work with Indigenous women. In the process of storytelling, why is it so powerful to work with Indigenous women, people who identify as Two-Spirit, LGBTQIA+, and why perhaps in that process, in that joy and that strength, in that beauty, in that heart work, why is that revolutionary? So Maria, you were speaking to Heartwork already. Do you want to start us off there, or the floor is open?
Otra vez me siento muy conmovida, no solamente por las palabras que se han compartido, sino también por la representación presente hoy en esta sala virtual. Veo, hay personas de color, hay mujeres indígenas, hay muchos idiomas aquí representados. Entonces, muchas gracias a todos y a todas por su tiempo. Primero, quiero comenzar preguntando por qué es fantástico, por qué es maravilloso trabajar con mujeres indígenas o con personas que se identifican como dos espíritus o de la comunidad LGBTIA+. ¿Por qué es excelente trabajar con estas personas y por qué creen ustedes es en ese proceso de trabajar con nuestros corazones, por qué creen que es revolucionario trabajar con estas personas? Y tal vez María, como ya estaba hablando mucho de procesos del corazón, tal vez podemos comenzar por usted.
Pues porque yo creo que en principio por habitar un cuerpo de mujer y todo lo que eso representa en este contexto social lo que ha sido el contexto histórico también de cómo a las mujeres se nos ha reprimido y se nos ha invisibilizado. Y hay una historia ancestral, ¿no? Que también buscó ocultar el poder femenino, que dicen, el poder de la mujer, la relación de las mujeres con las fases lunares, con las energías del territorio, cómo a partir de un sistema patriarcal, machista, ancestral, pero que esto se reforzó mucho más también con la invasión colonial, cómo desde ese momento las mujeres hemos sufrido una serie de violaciones, no solo de nuestros cuerpos, sino también de nuestros conocimientos, ocultándolos, invisibilizándolos. Y creo que ese sentimiento y ese habitar este cuerpo de mujer y crecer como una niña, como mujer, tiene sus implicaciones. Y a partir de esas implicaciones también es un acto de rebeldía, cuestionar cuál es nuestro papel dentro de nuestras propias comunidades. Y bien lo decía Graciela, es un acto político agarrar la cámara. Creo que en mi caso, cuando agarré la cámara no pensaba en soy artista o quiero ser artista, sino esta herramienta me va a funcionar, me va a servir y quiero contar las historias de otras mujeres con las cuales me siento representada, ¿no? Porque si no lo contamos nosotras, ¿quién lo va a contar, ¿no? Cuando somos las mujeres a quienes nos han atravesado múltiples violencias. Y creo que por eso me parece importante hablar, contar las historias, no solo de otras mujeres, sino contar también mi propia historia y autorrepresentarme y sentir que algo de lo que estoy autorrepresentando, de lo que estoy mostrando de mi vida, puede ser como un espejo para otras mujeres, no solo de mi comunidad, de otras comunidades, de otros territorios, sino de las mujeres en general, ¿no? Y creo también que la ternura es un acto político revolucionario. La ternura, el amor, construir desde el amor, retratar desde el amor, descolonizar esa mirada que suele ser violenta muchas veces.
Okay, big question. I think it's really the answer to your question is because we're in women's bodies. That's why it's important. That's why it's wonderful. And we're here to represent society. We've been repressed. We've been erased. There's an old, tired story about women that is there and meant to hide the immense power that we have, our connection with lunar cycles, for example, the connection with the energies that we feel in our territories. And this effort is due to a long existing patriarchal system that is ancestral, but then was further bolstered by the colonialist invasion. And so not only our bodies have been repressed, our knowledge, our wisdom has been repressed, and we can tell these stories because we are in women's bodies, but then we've also grown up as women. We've been socialized as women, and that has certain implications. And so when you talk about it being revolutionary, it's really an act of rebellion to question those implications. And like Graciela said, it's a political act to pick a camera. When I went and picked up a camera and started working with it, I didn't have the idea in my head, oh, I want to be an artist. I want to be a great artist. I picked it up to tell my story. Because to tell my story and to tell stories of other women, because the idea there was, if I don't tell this story, who's going to tell this story? There's so much violence that has been pushed through our bodies. And so I want to tell the story of women, but I'm also doing it just to tell my own story, really to tell my own story so that that story can possibly be a mirror for other women. And here, I don't just mean other women from my community or in nearby territories, for all women. The other thing that I think I want to touch on is the idea of tenderness and love. It's really quite revolutionary to bring tenderness and love into the world and to think in this way, to create in this way, and to decolonize in this way.
That's so beautiful. Thank you, Maria. We've had a request to do shorter segments so that the interpretation is a little bit quicker. So we can still speak longer, but perhaps a little shorter. And Graciela or Juliana.
Muchas gracias, María. Nos han pedido que hablemos en frases más cortas para no esperar tanto la interpretación. Entonces, así lo vamos a hacer. Ahora, Juliana y Graciela. I'm sorry, as the interpreter, who did you want to turn it over? Juliana or Graciela?
Ooh, you get to choose.
Pues sí, pueden, sí, cualquiera de las dos.
I'll
Juliana
speak.
or Graciela.
I'm happy to speak quickly. I think, well, first of all, what Maria said was just beautiful and right on. But I think we're really, whether we knew it or not, are all very desperate for voices outside of what we've been given in the past. And so whether it's female, Black, Indigenous, LGBTQ plus, all of these are exciting to see. So, you know, we've been thirsty for this for so long that, you know, I remember growing up, I was raised with film. My parents were both, you know, obsessed with, especially with independent film. I was raised on like Woody Allen films and, you know, a lot of comedy too. And it was, while that was a little bit different than maybe most American children, it was still sort of very much white male dominated content and made by white males. And so I think once I got old enough to understand that I hadn't been seeing representation of myself or women like the women that I was raised around, I think that it kind of emboldened me to do something different. I always wanted to try to be a little bit different. And so that was just another way, I think, of me, you know, expressing myself. But I think the content is there and now, or the thirst is there, the hunger is there for this. And, you know, it's really great to see all these beautiful, flourishing filmmakers coming up, so talented. And it's really, you know, what a time to be alive, I guess, in the film world. It's like, it's kind of blowing my mind. But yeah, I think it's something that inspires us, and we want to see, we want to feel represented. And you know, it's like with the sensation around Reservation Dogs, the TV show, and how excited everybody was to recognize themselves in all these characters, or recognize their family and friends in these characters. It was like, the response was mind-blowing. And for years, I have been told when I would pitch an idea to a studio or even an independent, production company, it was always the same, that nobody's really interested in Native American content right now, so we'll pass on that. And they were so wrong, as we're seeing now. So I hope that answered your question.
Yo puedo comentar. Yo creo que María acertó mucho y además habló muy bonito, que estamos todos y todas desesperadas, o sea, con mucha sed, mucha hambre para escuchar unas nuevas voces, esas voces que siempre estaban, voces de mujeres, de personas negras, indígenas, de la comunidad LGBTQ+. Y hemos estado con esa sed durante mucho tiempo. Yo me crié medio en el mundo del cine porque mis papás eran prácticamente obsesionados con el cine, pero eran muchas de esas películas Woody Allen, comedia. Y mientras sí, tal vez esto fue una crianza un poco diferente, aún así, era un tiempo de solo estar muy expuesta a películas sobre hombres blancos y hechos por hombres blancos. Y entonces cuando ya llegué a la edad en que podía pensar un poquito más por mí misma, vi que no había una representación, y eso, al ver eso y darme cuenta de eso me alentó a hacer algo diferente, que siempre quería hacer algo distinto. Entonces quiero cerrar diciendo que es tan bueno, o sea, me siento tan alegre ver cineastas, mujeres indígenas, prosperando en estos momentos. Es una coyuntura cinematográfica muy especial, y me inspira mucho. Por ejemplo, les puedo dar un ejemplo en concreto. Cuando salió la serie en la televisión Reservation Dogs, los perros de aldea, perros de reservación, brotó una emoción, una alegría de tanta gente por fin viéndose representados en pantalla, porque durante muchos años yo fui a los grandes estudios y les hablé de algunos proyectos, y siempre la misma respuesta, que a la gente no le interesa historias indígenas. Y bueno, gracias, pero no, no queremos participar. Y lo que veo ahora es que es muy evidente que se equivocaron.
Graciela, I want to hear from you, but I've been updated that we only have about a minute or two left to speak amongst ourselves. Apologies. Would you mind sharing in such a short time? Thank you.
Graciela, ahora sí, quiero escuchar más de usted. Me han dicho que apenas contamos con 1 a 2 minutos. Entonces, no sé si nos puede compartir unas palabras para cerrar.
Sí, no, me siento muy contemplada por las compañeras que hablaron muy bien. Primero, a primeira coisa que me encanta em trabalhar, né, com estas pessoas, não só como mulheres, mas como toda a diversidade, né, no cine. O primeiro é a diferença cultural, me encanta muito, porque eu não miro em outros lugares do cine, por exemplo, né, o cine de homens blancos, né, del grande del grande lugar de poder, por exemplo. E para mim é a principal coisa que me chama muito atenção é isto, porque nós estamos acostumbrados a mirar películas, né, produção muito normais, digamos assim, não? Porque é o que vão van a producir siempre, y siempre existirá, né, estas producciones que son de personas blancas. Entonces, para mí, la normalidad no me encanta. Entonces, el principal factor que me encanta y trabajar y que ainda me da esperanza, né, de continuar para adelante, es esta diferencia cultural que para mí es muy rico. Entonces, por ejemplo, el mito de existencia del mundo, la mayoría de las personas solo conocen el mito cristiano de las iglesias, por ejemplo. No se ha producciones de pueblos indígenas que tienen un vasto conocimiento en sus culturas, historias de la concepción del mundo. Entonces, é um conhecimento muito vasto. Esto me encanta mucho, no solamente de las mujeres, como hablé, mas como toda la diversidad de personas negras, de personas LGBTQI. Es la pluralidad del cine que me encanta.
I just want to begin by saying I feel like I've been well spoken for with what the panelists have said. I love working in film because of its diversity, not just with females, but film in all of its diversity. It's a big thing for me. It's become so normalized, these films that are made by white people, and that is what film is. That is normal. That's considered to be normal film, and those types of films exist and will continue to exist. But if that is the normality, if that is the norm, I am not into the norm. It's really the diversity that inspires me. And to give you a concrete example, when we think about creation myths, everyone knows the Christian creation myth. There are films made about the Christian creation myth, but there's not films largely made from an indigenous perspective, indigenous people who have vast amounts of knowledge and a vast understanding of the world and myths and how it came to be. So really it's that, here it's the whole diversity, women, people from LGBT plus communities, the plurality and diversity that is special, that makes it for me in film.
This has been incredible. Thank you all so much. Laura, I'll do quick sentences.
Ha sido increíble. Muchas gracias a todas.
We have a few words from Marcia from Firelight, who wants to also join the space with us. So while Marcia is joining, I'm sorry we didn't get time to answer these beautiful questions in the chat.
Marcia de Firelight Media se está uniendo a la llamada. Entonces, mientras la esperamos, bueno, primero quiero decir perdón que no hemos podido responder a las hermosas preguntas formuladas en el chat.
Thank you, Juliana, for answering them. Also, filmmakers, if you could put how we can contact you in the chat so this conversation can continue. Thank you all so much.
Muchas gracias, Juliana, por contestar las preguntas. También si nuestras documentalistas pueden poner su información de contacto en el chat y así podemos continuar esta conversación después. Muchas gracias a todas.
Thank you. And hello, everyone. My name is Marcia Smith. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the president of Firelight Media, and I'm also a board member of the International Documentary Association. I am a Black woman with an afro, wearing clear glasses, a white shirt, and a jeans jacket. I want to thank all of you for joining us for this special edition of our Beyond Resilience series, presented in partnership with the IDA. I also want to thank the teams at Firelight and the IDA who made this event possible, and especially our interpreters whose work made this event accessible to participants around the world. I feel really uncomfortable doing this because I feel like we just barely got started. So I really do encourage you to put contact information for the panelists. Hi, panelists. I get to talk to you. Please put your information into the chat. And I very much hope that this conversation can continue. I can say that as a board member of the IDA, this is very much the kind of conversation that we want to encourage, that we want to host, that we want to see happen at IDA events. So please make it yours. I'm looking at the panel, but I'm really talking to everyone who's listening today. So for those of you who don't know too much about Firelight, we are a nonprofit organization that supports nonfiction filmmakers of color. We're based in New York City. Our key programs include the Documentary Lab for emerging nonfiction filmmakers of color and the William Greaves Research and Development Fund for mid-career filmmakers of color. The Greaves R&D Fund is our first international fund. It is designed to support filmmakers of Indigenous and/or African descent from the United States, Mexico, Brazil, Puerto Rico, and Colombia. The panelists who joined us today have all received research and development funding through this program. Through the Greaves R&D Fund, we renew our commitment to ensuring that underrepresented communities are actively cultivated, participating in and influencing the nonfiction industry and the broader discourse about equity and inclusion in nonfiction media production around the world. Firelight's programs also include Beyond Resilience, the series in which today's discussion is a part. Beyond Resilience is a series of screenings, essays, and curated conversations that explore the challenges, strategies, and experiences of creating and distributing work in periods of social transformation. You can learn more about Firelight and our work and future events by visiting firelightmedia.tv. I thank you all again, participants in LA. I hope to see you throughout the rest of the IDA conference. Thank you to our panelists and thank you to the audience for joining us today. See you soon.
Thank you, Marcia.
Mi nombre es Marcia Smith, mi pronombre es ella, soy presidenta de Firelight Media y también formo parte de la junta directiva. Soy una mujer negra con lentes y una camisa blanca y una chaqueta de jean. Muchas gracias por participar en este panel. Y gracias a Firelight y a Aida por apoyar este panel. Y especialmente muchas gracias a los y las intérpretes. Me siento un poco rara cerrando con todo esto porque apenas comenzamos. Hola panelistas, siento que no he tenido ni un momento para conversar con ustedes. Entonces, por favor, si pueden poner su información de contacto en el chat porque realmente quiero que esta conversación siga. Como integrante de la junta directiva, es justamente este tipo de conversaciones que queremos que figure en lo que ofrece IDA. Les cuento que para los que no conocen bien, Firelight Media es una organización sin ánimo de lucros y nuestros programas principales, aquí estoy resumiendo un poquito en la interpretación, son el Laboratorio de Documentales, DocLab, y el Fondo William Greaves, que es el primer fondo, que es nuestro primer fondo internacional que busca apoyar a cineastas indígenas y afrodescendientes, específicamente en Estados Unidos, México, Brasil, Puerto Rico y Colombia. Y de hecho los panelistas hoy han recibido apoyo de este fondo y eso es para renovar nuestro compromiso con cineastas de color. También ofrecemos una serie de paneles Beyond Resilience, más allá de la resiliencia, y si quiere aprender más más sobre nuestros programas, puede visitar nuestra página firelightmedia.tv. Muchas gracias a los y las panelistas y al público. Espero poder reunirme con algunos de ustedes a lo largo de la semana y muchas gracias de nuevo.